So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the Tackling Stress, Anxiety, and Depression with Nutrition webinar. Today's session will delve into key topics of anxiety and depression in Canada and how nutrition and eating strategies can help. Our presenter tonight is registered dietitian Jackie Silver. Some of you may recognize Jackie. She's done a few of these webinars for us. Jackie is a Toronto-based registered dietitian whose mission is to empower and support the neurodivergent and physically disabled communities through nutrition. Jackie runs a virtual private practice, consulting business, and blog, which has simple recipes and health information tailored to these communities. She loves cooking, exercising, traveling, journaling, and spending time with family and friends. We are very pleased to have Jackie sharing her knowledge and insights on this important topic with us. I will turn the screen over to you, Jackie.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you for the intro, Shauna.
Thank you.
You can see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So today we are going to be talking about the role that nutrition plays with stress, anxiety, and depression. So for today's agenda, I'll tell you a little bit about myself, although Shauna pretty much covered it. We'll go through the learning objectives. We'll talk quickly about the prevalence of anxiety and depression in the disability community. We'll talk about stress eating and tips for coping with stress eating. We'll talk about 2 diets that have been studied to support mental health, and a brief overview of some supplements that may play a role in supporting mental health, and tips for feeding yourself when you're feeling depressed. And then we will end with a Q&A. So as Shauna mentioned, I'm the founder of Jackie Silver Nutrition, which is a virtual private practice. We are a team of 4. So it's me, one other dietitian, a blog manager, and virtual assistant, small but mighty team. And the bulk of my business is the private practice. And we support neurodivergent and disabled kids, teens, and adults. We also have a very active blog, and I do presentations and consulting work. I graduated from Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly known as Ryerson, with the Masters of Health Science in Nutrition Communications, and completed all my training and exams to become a registered dietitian. And I've done a lot of extra training since graduating in mindful eating, sensory feeding therapy, and picky eating, and I'm currently in an eating disorders course. Okay, so now onto the learning objectives. Oh, I just realized my screen is not showing full screen. Okay, there we go, that's better. Okay, so we are going to identify the prevalence of anxiety and depression in Canada, understand the factors that may contribute to stress eating, learn how to apply different tools for managing stress eating, discuss the research behind nutrition interventions for anxiety and depression, and learn how to implement various strategies for feeding yourself when you feel depressed. And I just want to reiterate what Shauna said, that this is not intended to be medical advice. This is not intended to be personalized nutrition advice. You should always consult with a dietitian or a doctor when making changes, especially with supplements. And the information here is meant to be educational. It is not a substitute for anti-anxiety or antidepressants. Mental health medications is absolutely not a substitute for that. The recommendations here are for things you can do with your diet that might support your mental health alongside with all the other strategies that you are already doing. So please do not stop taking any medication that you're on, and always talk with a doctor. And if you want personalized advice, then talk with a dietitian. Okay, something is not, so there were supposed to be two bars showing on this picture, but they're not here right now. But that's okay. So we'll just get into a little bit about how prevalent mental health disorders are in Canada. So according to a 2022 survey of Canadians ages 15 and up, 5.2% reported having generalized anxiety disorder, and 7.6% reported experiencing a major depressive episode over 12 months. Also, 350 million individuals suffer from depression globally, all over the world. So it is quite high. And honestly, I think some of the numbers are even quite a lot higher than this. But this is what has been reported. And as you may have guessed, there is an intersection between mental health and physical disabilities. So adults with physical disabilities report experiencing frequent mental distress. So that means, mental health disturbances, 5 times as often as able-bodied individuals. Also, Canadians with chronic physical conditions are 2 times more likely to experience a mood or anxiety disorder compared to people who do not have chronic medical conditions. And I would say this is probably not a surprise to you, dealing with a physical disability or chronic illness is quite stressful, and it makes sense that it would cause more distress and lower mental health. So yeah, summary is that mental health struggles with mental health are higher in disabled folks compared to non-disabled folks. Okay, so now I want to do a little discussion question before we get into the topic of stress eating. So if you could participate, I would love that, and type your answer in the group, in the chat, and tell me what types of foods do you tend to crave when you are feeling stressed? And okay, we have chocolate, chips, and ice cream. Yeah, very common. And there's no judgment at all coming from me. 0 judgment, so don't be shy.
I think we have a shy crowd here tonight, Jackie.
Yeah. Okay, that's all right. Okay, so let's get into stress eating. So and I'm sure that a lot of this information will be relatable to you. So when we're stressed, it can cause changes to our eating behavior. So what I mean by this is we tend to crave more of those comfort foods, those high sugary foods, like pizza, mac and cheese, chicken nuggets, ice cream, chocolate, cake, chips, cookies, any of that. And when we experience stressful events, it activates our stress response system in our brain, which in turn increases our cortisol levels, and that can affect our appetite and eating habits. So if we, and now with stress, it can go either way. Like when some people are stressed, their appetite is dulled and they don't tend to stress eat, like they end up losing their appetite. Here we're talking about what happens when your appetite increases when you're stressed. So there's an increase in cortisol, which is a stress hormone, and that's going to trigger like that seeking of pleasure and satisfaction and comfort in our brain to try to calm down our stress. And this increases our appetite and increases our cravings for these comfort foods and sweet foods. And our brain does not like being stressed, so we end up wanting to seek out coping strategies to soothe that stress and improve our mood, which is why we tend to go for these more palatable processed foods. They're more likely to provide that short-term level of comfort. Now, I'm going to explain this in more of a cycle. So I like to call this the stress eating cycle. So when we get triggered, a trigger is something that causes us to be stressed. That could be, a lot of work, financial demands, home demands, anything in our life that's stressful. So we get triggered, we are stressed, and then we end up wanting to relieve that stress. So we end up eating those comfort foods, those sweet foods, because we get more of a craving for it. And then in turn, that temporarily relieves the stress. I mean, in actuality, it probably doesn't, but our brain thinks that it's temporarily relieving the stress. And then another trigger happens, we get stressed again, and the cycle repeats. And I have a note here saying that foods like pizza, candy, chips, and ice cream are considered rewarding during stressful times. These foods help to satisfy these cravings and also amplify the cravings, which further contributes to the overeating that often occurs with stress. So our cravings become stronger when we're stressed for these foods. Now I'm going to go through these 4 tips for managing stress eating. I'll go through them in each subsequent slides. But I first want to say that one tip that's not written here is to make sure that you are eating at regular intervals throughout the day. That is going to play a big role in reducing the amount of stress eating or binge eating that might occur at night. So I usually recommend to people to eat every 3 to 4 hours to ensure that you're getting enough nutrients throughout the day and feeding yourself and getting, your energy and nourishment throughout the day. And studies show that eating consistently throughout the day can reduce overeating or binge eating at night. And people who skip meals during the day, their body at nighttime goes, oh, I need to make up for all that energy and calories that I didn't eat during the day. And so you're more likely to overeat and binge eat and stress eat at night. So that is one thing that you can start doing, is make sure that you don't skip meals. And also I want to really validate the fact that I believe in all foods fit. I have, balance. I believe in balance and moderation, and I'm not here to villainize these comfort foods or, more palatable processed foods. I'm not here to villainize them. They can definitely be a part of a balanced diet, and I don't believe in labeling foods as good versus bad. All foods play a role. Okay, so the first tip here for managing your stress eating is to try another activity to replace that urge to stress eat. So a lot of times when people are stressed, they might be craving stimulation. So I often will encourage people to get stimulation from other ways, and that could be from fidget toys. Or from knitting or drawing or painting. Something to do with your hands can often be a healthy distraction from the urge to stress eat, and it still stimulates you. It still stimulates your brain. Another activity that you could try is maybe sucking on a sucking candy, chewing some gum, sipping a nice warm cup of tea, or your favorite seltzer. That can be some nice alternatives to stress eating, especially if you're at night, you're sitting in front of the TV and you might feel that urge to just have something in your mouth. The sipping and chewing could be a nice distraction. Exercise is a really great way to cope with stress and the urge to stress eat. So if you are feeling like you want to stress eat, something you could do is maybe go outside for a roll or a walk, and get some fresh air, or maybe do some yoga or light stretches. And oftentimes that urge to want to stress eat will go away, and the stress will get relieved from doing some movement and physical activity. Housework is also a good option, another way to be active and keep busy. listening to music or a podcast is good too. So yeah, so I'd encourage you, next time you feel stressed, think about this list, try some other, try something from this list, and then maybe revisit your urge to stress eat in 20, 30 minutes. You may notice that that urge is gone. Okay, next tip is to eat balanced snacks. So I know we talked about eating at regular intervals, but another tip is to instead, come up with a list of balanced snacks that would be satisfying and filling for you. That might be alternatives to what you might want to eat when you're stressed, or something to pair with what you want to eat when you're stressed. So if you think about it, like having, a chocolate bar is not going to be as filling. It's not going to be as filling as having like something with protein in it, which is more satiating and satisfying and filling. So, you might have like a bag of chips and still feel hungry because that wasn't very filling. It didn't have much staying power. So if you, so if you have a more balanced snack that has fiber, protein, fruits or vegetables, it also might reduce your urge to stress eat, and it's a good alternative of something else to eat that is going to keep you satisfied and full. And I like to use this formula. I call it the balanced snack formula, which is where you pair a fruit or a vegetable with a carbohydrate and a protein. So it could be one or the other, carb or protein with a fruit or veg, or it could be a carb and protein with the fruit or veg. And now if you are craving something sweet or comforting, so for example, chocolate, you might want to pair that with some protein like yogurt, because that's going to keep you fuller and satisfied for longer and reduce the urge to stress eat, again, 5 minutes later. If you're craving maybe ice cream or something, maybe you want to pair that with a fruit to get some fiber as well. And now I have a few ideas of some balanced snack ideas. And now when I say nighttime, I'm saying nighttime because I find most people tend to stress eat at night, but obviously you could still incorporate these ideas into your snacks during the day. So the first example we have is banana and peanut butter rolled up in a whole wheat tortilla. It's a really nice snack, actually. You spread peanut butter on the tortilla, you put the banana inside and then roll it up. And the tortilla is going to serve as your carbohydrates. The peanut butter is going to be your protein, and the banana is the fruit. So that's a really good, satisfying snack. Carrot sticks and hummus. The carrot is the vegetable, the hummus is the protein. And for grapes, crackers, and cheese, the grapes are the fruit, crackers are the carb, cheese is the protein. And yeah, I'm not going to go through the others right now. So the third tip is to take a mindful pause. Now you can do this you can do this at two different times. You can do this before you are about to stress eat, or you can do it in the middle of stress eating or emotional eating. And so this mindful pause is like, honestly, it could be as short as 5 seconds. It could be anywhere from 5 to 30 seconds. You take a few slow, deep breaths, check in with your body, observe how you're feeling, ask yourself if you're feeling hungry or if you're feeling full, check in with your internal hunger, fullness cues. And then that is giving you a pause so that you can then make a more conscious decision of what to do next, of what the next steps are. So this is all about responding versus reacting. Some of you may have heard these terms before. Reacting is when there is no pause. So it's when you make an impulsive decision. So for example, you come home from work, you you had a fight with your boss and you're really stressed and you just want to grab the ice cream, and you don't take any pause, you just go straight to the freezer. That is reacting. Responding would be, you come home, you take a 10-second pause, you check in with yourself, say, you know what, I'm gonna go do yoga now. I'm gonna go do a meditation now. I'm gonna go do another activity to relieve my stress and calm myself down. Or it could be, you know what, I'm gonna have a fruit with the ice cream. And I'm gonna, maybe not eat the ice cream from the tub. I'm gonna put some out in a bowl. Or it could be, you know what, I'm gonna make a balanced snack right now. I'm gonna have some protein and carb with a vegetable. So giving yourself that pause, it can be very helpful in changing your course of action that comes next. And okay, I'm feeling thirsty. So the way that you can also apply this in the middle of stress eating is, say, for example, okay, you go for the tub of ice cream, don't judge yourself, have some self-compassion. You take this mindful pause in the middle of eating that ice cream and you check in with your body and how you're feeling, and you notice, you know what, I'm actually feeling satisfied right now. I'm actually feeling, I'm feeling quite full right now. I don't think I need any more ice cream right now. So then that pause is going to help you to, it can help you to reduce overeating and feeling sick from overeating. Like if you end up eating the whole tub of ice cream, you might feel really sick and gross from that. So this mindful pause is going to also help to break that up. Okay, now the next tip is to practice self-compassion. Now, this is really important because I don't want, like I said earlier, I'm not about villainizing comfort foods or higher sugar foods. I believe all foods fit, and stress eating, emotional eating it's a natural part of life. And throughout, this journey of trying to improve your stress eating, you're gonna have times where you stress eat, and it's gonna be really important to have that self-compassion and not judge yourself for it, because we're, at the end of the day, we're humans, we're not robots, we are not perfect, we make mistakes, and that's okay. So self-compassion is about relating to yourself in a healthy way during times of suffering. Essentially, it's about talking to yourself the same way that you would talk to a dear friend. And it has 3 different core components of it. So the first is self-kindness versus self-judgment. So that means treating ourselves in a kind way, the way we would talk to a loved one or a dear friend, and not judging ourselves so harshly. So the way that this relates to stress eating is, let's say you had a stressful day, you came home, you had a tub of ice cream. I bet you, excuse me, I bet that you would never say to a friend, oh, you're disgusting. Look at what you did. You ate a whole tub of ice cream. You're such a slob. No, you would never say that to a friend, but you're more likely to say that to yourself. So what you would probably say to a friend is, you know what? It's okay. You had a stressful day. You're human. You're not perfect. We have these days, and that's okay. Tomorrow's a new day to keep going. I bet you that is what you would say to a friend, but probably not what you'd say to yourself. So that is what I want you to flip and start saying to yourself. Now, the second component, second pillar of self-compassion is mindfulness versus over-identification. And that means being mindful of our thoughts, feelings, and actions, but not over-identifying with them. So not, really being self-critical or judgmental, really, and being so attached to our emotions, just seeing them as seeing thoughts and emotions as things that come and go and are temporary. The third pillar is common humanity versus isolation. So that's showing common humanity means that you are not alone in your struggles, and there are so many people in the world who have similar struggles, versus being isolated is thinking that you're the only one who has this problem and nobody else does. And I could tell you with stress eating, you are not the only one who stress eats. It is a very, very common, and you are not alone in this. Okay, so this is an activity that I really enjoy doing with clients. I call it the stress eating behavior cycle. And normally I would do this with a client as like, I have this as a blank template that they can fill out. But this one I've filled out an example here. But this could be very helpful for you to practice on your own. So it's a way to see all the events that lead the trigger and the events that lead up to the stress eating incident, as an example. So in this situation, and then that can help us also brainstorm how to prevent that from happening in the future or what to do differently next time. So in this example, the person came home from work feeling super hungry. They ordered fast food for dinner. Then they were still hungry, so they ate a bag of chips and felt sick after. So we cannot just look at this result in isolation. We have to look at everything that led up to it, including the trigger. So the trigger was this person had a stressful day at work. And obviously there could be multiple triggers that you could experience that make you feel stressed. It's good to be aware of your triggers. Stressful day at work. And what led to that, well, not what led to it, but what they realized was that they didn't get enough sleep the night before, so they went to work feeling tired. Then they had a meeting with their boss, which was anxiety provoking. Then the next event, they made a mistake on a project at work, which made them even more anxious. They also forgot to eat lunch because they were stressed, so they skipped a meal. They came home feeling hungry and stressed, and so they ordered fast food and then had chips and felt sick. So if we think about this cycle, we can think about what we can do differently next time. So one thing that happened was this person didn't get enough sleep, so they were feeling tired. When you don't get enough sleep, you are more likely to stress eat and make more impulsive food choices. So that probably contributed to it. So they can try to go to bed earlier next time. They could set themselves a reminder to eat lunch and an afternoon snack. So because they forgot to eat lunch, that also contributed to stress eating and overeating when they got home from work. Another thing they could try is a stimulating activity after dinner to prevent feeling sick after eating past fullness. So what I mean by this is, okay, let's say, they still ordered the fast food for dinner. They could have taken a pause then and tried another activity like going for a walk or a roll, or maybe writing in their journal or sipping on a cup of tea, and then reassess to see if they were still craving the chips. And that would have prevented them from feeling sick. Another thing that they could do is when they got home from work, they could have made themselves a balanced snack, a filling snack, while they were preparing dinner. So then they're not going to feel super angry and irritable, and make an impulsive choice to just order the fast food. So having that snack could also serve as like a buffer to give you time to prepare a meal, to prepare your dinner. So I would really encourage you to think about next time you stress eat, think about the events that led, like the preceding 24 hours and what led up to that and what you can do differently next time. Okay, so now we're going to pivot from stress eating and talk about diets that support mental health. Now, I want to say that the research here is like still very new and emerging, and there's no conclusive results. So yeah, please keep that in mind. But there has been research on the Mediterranean diet and the MIND diet for mental health. So, and I'm going to get into what the Mediterranean diet is in the next slide. But for now, I'm just going to talk a bit about the research. So the Mediterranean diet has originally was originally not intended for depression or anxiety. It was intended to be studied for heart health, honestly, many different chronic conditions, cardiac disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer. So any chronic disease, a physical condition, Mediterranean diet. There's been shown to be very promising results with a Mediterranean eating pattern. It can also lower the risk of developing Alzheimer's, and more recently has been studied on the effects of depression and anxiety. So large-scale studies have shown the Mediterranean diet can reduce depressive symptoms. People also report having improved quality of life and reduced rates of depression. It's also been shown to lower anxiety levels. Now, keep in mind that there are some studies that come out that show no association between the Mediterranean diet and anxiety or depression. But overall, there does seem to be a positive effect. But like I said, the research is it's like really quite new. Like we know that the Mediterranean diet can improve heart health. That is very well researched, but it is not as well researched yet in depression and anxiety. Now you might be wondering why, like this sounds kind of weird. Why would what you eat help your depression or anxiety? So the research seems to show that the connection is related to inflammation. So these physical conditions that I mentioned, like, these medical conditions like cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, and cancers, they're associated with higher levels of inflammation in the body. And depression also seems to be connected to higher rates of inflammation, also in the brain. And so the Mediterranean diet has a lot of foods that are that help with lowering inflammation. So that is partly why it helps with heart disease. And so it's thought that having these foods that are rich in antioxidants, which are in fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, polyphenols, which is another type of antioxidant, flavonoids, another type of antioxidant, which is which is in red wine and dark chocolate, green tea. So these foods they're rich in antioxidants, which means that they neutralize. Now, I hope that I'm making sense here. I'm getting pretty sciencey, but they neutralize free radicals, and free radicals in the body are associated with higher levels of disease. So when antioxidants neutralize them, that's going to lower our risk for disease. And that also lowers the inflammation in the body, and it seems like it would lower the inflammation in the brain, and that's why it may have a positive effect on mental health. So yeah, I hope that made sense. And if you are interested in this topic, it is really fascinating. You can look up nutritional psychiatry, the term nutritional psychiatry. It's a new and emerging field in how nutrition can affect mental health disorders. And now, obviously, like I'd said earlier, this is not, the Mediterranean diet is not a substitute for antidepressants. I'm pretty sure in a lot of the studies, the people were still taking antidepressants, but having this additional tool, such as changing your diet, was shown to reduce the rates of depression and anxiety. Now, the Mediterranean diet is an eating pattern. So it really encourages people to consume more of these anti-inflammatory foods and less of the foods that are more pro-inflammatory. So that means consuming more fruits, veggies, whole grain carbohydrates, legumes. So what I mean by that is beans, lentils, more nuts and seeds, and heart healthy fats like avocado and olive oil. The Mediterranean diet is really big on olive oil. And then it encourages people to consume less high sugar foods, refined carbohydrates, so like white pasta, white bread, less red meat, and to limit your alcohol consumption. And I want to preface this all by saying that please note that you do not need to completely eliminate processed foods from your diet. All foods fit as part of a balanced lifestyle, and I would encourage you to think about more the column on the left, consuming more of these foods, because then that will probably naturally reduce your consumption of the foods in the right column. Like, for example, if you have more plant-based protein sources, like if you end up having chickpea curry, then that might mean you might naturally have less red meat because you're replacing a red meat dinner with like a tofu or chickpea protein instead. Now, for the interest of time, I'm going to skip this slide, but this slide is basically, it has more of like a guideline for how often to have certain foods. And what I meant to say also is that the Mediterranean diet is also really a big fan of having fish, which has those omega-3 fatty acids, which help play a role in reducing inflammation. But I would be focused more on the previous slide. Okay, the next diet that has been studied for mental health is called the MIND diet. This is a combination of the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet. The DASH diet is called Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. Just like the name, it was developed for people with high blood pressure. So researchers have combined this with the Mediterranean diet, and the MIND diet stands for the Mediterranean Diet Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay, because it was originally created to see if diet can have an impact on developing dementia and cognitive decline in older adults. So dementia is also thought to be associated with more inflammation in the brain. So researchers wanted to see if a lower, anti-inflammatory diet could reduce rates of dementia, or at least reduce the rate that dementia progresses. And they've also done some studies on depression and anxiety, and the MIND diet was associated with a lower chance of depression and lower chance of psychological distress. It did not seem to have any effect on anxiety, but the Mediterranean diet alone did have an effect on anxiety. So that's something to keep in mind. If you struggle more so with anxiety and not depression, then the MIND diet might not be the best for you. Okay, so what does the MIND diet entail? So there's definitely overlap with this diet and the Mediterranean diet, but the MIND diet has more of an emphasis on dark green leafy vegetables. So that's your spinach, your kale, your collard greens. And it also has more of an emphasis on berries specifically, because berries are very high in antioxidants, which helps with inflammation. It also is not as rigid, I would say, with the fish. Like the Mediterranean diet recommends fish 3 times a week. MIND diet recommends it once a week. So they recommend 3 servings per day of whole grains to get that fiber. For proteins, 5 servings a week of nuts. And a serving of nut is about 1/4 cup. 4 meals a week of beans, 2 meals a week of poultry, 1 meal a week of fish. So you can see it's also very plant protein focused. So similar to the Mediterranean, they're encouraging tofu, beans, legumes as your protein sources as opposed to animal sources. And they also really recommend olive oil for your healthy fats. And specifically 2 servings a week of berries, 60 servings a week of green leafy vegetables, and additional servings per day of other vegetables that are not leafy greens. Now, you don't need to be following this exactly, but I'm just, I'm teaching you what the research shows and what the guidelines are for this diet. But in the next 2 slides, I'm going to give you more practical tips for how you can incorporate more of these anti-inflammatory foods into your diet to hopefully support your mental health. So you don't need to worry about following this, strictly to a T. So now this is for the practical portion. So first tip is to eat nuts with fruit for a snack. So have nuts more often, throw them into your salads, your dishes, whatever it may be, have them as a snack. Next is cook with olive oil more often. So use olive oil in your salad dressings. If you're cooking on a stovetop, you can do olive oil. Olive oil is not good for super high heat. So if you're putting something in the oven, I would recommend avocado oil. Next tip is to make more plant-based meals. So have more vegan protein sources for meals, go for like a chickpea curry, a lentil curry, lentil bolognese, tofu dishes. Try to incorporate these more often into your diet. And then next tip is to include a fruit or vegetable at most of your meals and snacks. And then try to swap out some of your white carbohydrates for whole grains instead. So look for whole wheat pasta. You can experiment with brown rice, quinoa, oats, barley, some of these whole grains. Next, now I have some more tips. Next one is to add dark leafy greens to your dishes, kale, spinach, collard. This can be really simple. If you make smoothies, you can throw spinach in there. If you make a lot of soups, you can throw kale or spinach into those. If you're scrambling eggs, add some spinach. You can literally throw them in anything and they shrivel down. You barely even taste them. Stir fries, anything. Try making smoothies. Smoothies are a great way to get more fruits and vegetables. You can get lots of berries, banana, tropical fruit. You can add spinach. You can add other vegetables into your smoothies. Some people like using frozen cauliflower because it doesn't really have a taste. Some people do frozen zucchini. Feel free to experiment with those. Next step is to add 1 to 2 tablespoons of flax meal or chia seeds to your oatmeal or smoothies. Now, flax meal is the ground up version of flax seeds. And if you have the whole flax seeds, it's just going to go right through you and your body's not going to absorb it. So I recommend purchasing it ground, or you can grind it in like a coffee grinder at home. And these are just awesome ways to get extra fiber. Try having fish 3 times a week. You can do canned tuna or salmon. Swap out the chicken or red meat for fish. And if you're a vegetarian, you can still follow most of these principles. Next tip is try whole wheat or lentil or chickpea pasta instead of white. Okay, now there has been some research on certain supplements that might support mental health. The research is even newer in this area than the Mind diet and Mediterranean diet. So really, this is for informational purposes, take it with a grain of salt. Some studies have shown that people who are deficient in folic acid, so their bodies don't have enough folic acid, they might be more likely to feel depressed. So if they are deficient, it could be helpful to eat foods that contain folate or take a supplement. But also the research is very new with this. Similarly with vitamin D. Vitamin D has shown to improve symptoms of depression, and especially in people who are deficient. So the majority of Canadians are deficient in vitamin D because we don't get enough sunlight during the year. I typically always recommend my clients take a vitamin D supplement even throughout the summer. But people who are deficient are more likely to feel, I mean, obviously not everyone who's deficient in vitamin D is going to be depressed, but there is a correlation with being, having low levels of vitamin D and feeling depressed. So and you could get a blood test to check for your vitamin D levels and if you're low, then you should take a supplement and then your levels should normalize. So that's, that's pretty like a simple fix, I would say. Now there is new and emerging research on probiotics and how they affect the gut. There is some thinking that since there is such a strong connection between your gut and your brain, it's called the gut-brain connection. There's some hypotheses out there that if you feed your colon, your gut with healthy bacteria, that bacteria plays a role in producing hormones such as serotonin, which play a role in mood. So some people think that, and also these gut bacteria can also play a role in reducing inflammation. So there's some theories out there that improving your gut health is in turn going to might improve your brain health. But we still need a lot more research in that area to really know. Regardless though, research has also shown that antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications can kill off some of the good bacteria in our guts. So that can have a negative impact on our gut, and having probiotics would, that's feeding your gut with this healthy bacteria that can help to replenish the bacteria that got destroyed from your medication. So that could be another reason to take a probiotic supplement in general for general health. But obviously speak to your doctor or dietitian before making any of these changes. Okay, so I have another discussion question. Hopefully you won't be so shy. If you could put in the chat and tell me, how does depression typically impact your eating habits? Okay, someone wrote eat less or eat more. Yep, exactly. Okay, someone said, I don't eat, I don't have an appetite. Yep. I don't feel like cooking as much. Yep. Food where there is no preparation to do. Yes, exactly. When you're feeling depressed, the last thing you want to do is cook. A lot of people don't have an appetite when they're feeling depressed. They don't have the energy to eat or cook. Some people might end up eating more, getting more of an appetite when they're depressed. It really, similarly with stress, appetite can go both ways. Yeah, these are wonderful answers. Okay, so I have a few tips for how to feed yourself when you do feel depressed. And somebody had mentioned this in the chat, easy meals that don't have preparation. So if you want to kind of get prepared, I would encourage you to write down, maybe in your phone or on a piece of paper, write down a list of easy meals that you can make when you feel depressed. Things that are, super simple. Could be a smoothie, could be an Ensure, a nutrition supplement drink. Could be toast and peanut butter. Could be a protein bar with a fruit, just something that's really easy to put together, maybe a tuna sandwich with some baby carrots, stuff that's really simple, so that when you are feeling depressed and you don't have energy, but you know you need to fuel yourself to help with your energy, refer to this list and make something super simple. Next tip is to eat on a schedule. If you're not going to have an appetite, many people lose their appetite when they're feeling depressed. We have to resort to eating on a schedule, even though we don't feel hungry. So that's, setting alarms maybe every 3 to 4 hours to remind yourself to eat. So even though you don't feel hungry, you know that you need to eat something because your body needs nourishment and fuel. Next tip is to utilize no prep meals. So oftentimes when when people are feeling depressed, the last thing you want to do is cook. You do not have the energy to cook. So I would encourage you to find balanced meals that don't require prep, something that you can order or be delivered. Maybe having a few frozen meals kept in your freezer that you can pull out and save for those very low energy days. A lot of people really like meal kit delivery services or meal delivery services like HelloFresh, Good Food. A few of my clients recently told me about this other company called Factor Meals that they send you them like fresh meals every week, and they're already made. You don't need to put together ingredients from a kit. You just heat them up. So that could be helpful. Or referring to your list of easy meals that don't really require prep, like a ham and cheese sandwich. That doesn't really require prep. Last tip is to have a support system that you can lean on. Maybe a friend or a family member who can help you with grocery shopping, or maybe drop off some food for you that you can keep in the freezer. Having a support system and not being isolated is really helpful and really key when we're struggling with mental health. So lastly, I have some meal planning tips for when you are feeling depressed. So this is building on the previous slide. So another thing that you can do is batch cook some freezer meals. So this could be, soups, stews, curries, casseroles, lasagnas. If you prep these in advance, keep them in the freezer and say, I'm going to keep this for a low energy day. I'm going to keep this for a bad day or a depression day. And then you could pull it out. And even better is if you pre-portion them into individual containers, you pull it out, defrost, or heat in the microwave, and you have a meal. You have nourishment, something to nourish and fuel yourself with. You could also make a list of foods that you can prepare in advance. So, or things that you can maybe purchase in advance, like individual hummus cups or yogurt cups, simple grab and go things, so that you are ready, ready to go and have something to feed yourself. And then make a list of easy meals, which is what we talked about on the previous slide. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the presentation. I know I covered a lot of information. I'll just tell you a little bit more about our services. So we offer virtual one-on-one nutrition counseling services. We are a team of 2 dietitians, and we can support clients in Ontario, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. We offer free 15-minute discovery calls. Feel free to check out my blog. I also have an online course called Meal Prep Made Easy, which is really all the meal prep skills that I teach my clients. I've packaged into a course, and it's also relevant for if you're feeling depressed and don't really know how to feed yourself. And I have lots of free blog posts and recipes. I've attached some photos here of some blog posts that would be relevant to the hydrocephalus and spina bifida community. And you're welcome to reach out. I really welcome people emailing me with questions, Jackie@JackieSilverNutrition.com, and feel free to check out my website, JackieSilverNutrition.com, or follow me on Instagram at Accessible Wellness. Okay,